Hi guys, welcome back to Liking Hiking. So today I thought I would bring you my top 10 tips for hiking the Overland Track. So as you may have seen, this January I had the opportunity to hike the Overland Track in Tasmania. I just want to preface this video and say it was in a bit of a heat wave, so we had a very, very different experience to what most people have on the Overland Track. But I still want to bring you my top 10 tips that I think is, regardless of the weather, will hopefully make your Overland Track experience a little bit better if you're considering it. So yeah, let's get started. So my first tip is to choose the type of overland adventure that you want to have. So there's three main options of ways that you can do the overland. So basically you can do a tour group with private huts. So when you Google the Overland Track, the first two, I think, web pages that come up, or two or three, are tour companies that you can choose to take a tour of the Overland Track from. So one of those tour companies has private huts along the track. Now these huts, they have access to showers, all their meals are done. I'm pretty sure they have wine and cheese every night, but that could be a rumor. So if you're the type of person who can't live without a shower, then that's probably the type of adventure for you. So I would definitely start there. The other type of tour you can do is like a private or a small group guided tour. So you still stay in tents, you do all the camping and everything else like everyone else. However, you do have a tour guide who's there to guide you along. Often that company, I think as well, you can hire gear through them. So if you're someone who's brand new to hiking who has no idea, that might be a good option for you because you have that safety of the group, the tour guide. You can hire any of the gear that you don't have, and all that kind of thing. I know they have cooked meals for lunch and dinner, so that is a pro. And yeah, smelling their lunches was like torture. But yeah, so if that's sort of more your style, you're not quite familiar with navigating or overnight hiking or something like that, or you just don't have the time to prepare. So I know quite a few people that go for that tour are people that just don't have the time to put in the research into the trail, to organize every bit of gear that they need on them by themselves. So going with that group tour is a really good option for them. So if that's you, do highly recommend. It looked like both the tour groups, the private hut and the tenting group, it looked like they were all having a fantastic time. So don't be afraid to take that option if that's something that you're more comfortable with. The third option is what we did, which is a self-guided hike on the overland. So you book your pass, you can take as long as you like to complete the hike, so you have a lot more flexibility that way, which is something we really appreciated. Everyone hikes in the same direction during the summer months, and basically you can only hike it in the summer months unless you are a very experienced sort of alpinist and with snow conditions and that kind of thing, which I know I'm not. I don't have much opportunity for that more alpine hiking. So definitely summer months. You have to book a pass in the summer months, which brings me to tip 2, which is book your passes early. So for the main walking season, outside of those winter months, you need to book your passes early because it is such a popular trail, it books out. So passes open, or permits open on the 1st of July, which is Friday. So you need to book them on that day. Be prepared for them to sell out like concert tickets. We did not book our passes then, which brings me to part B of my tip, which is basically if you do miss out or you're looking at booking the overland later in the year, don't panic. Spots become available as people cancel because obviously they're booking in July for something they may be doing in February. So as we all know, circumstances change so much and we've all been through that the past few years. People pull out for all sorts of reasons and that's when those spots open up. So if you've missed out on your permit, don't panic, just keep checking as often as you can, every day, every week, that kind of thing. If you're a solo hiker, you're flexible with your dates, or maybe just you're going with one other person, you will find it a lot more likely. But if you're a big group of people who wants to go, or you have to have a particular set of dates, book in July 1st. That is my big tip. So parks.tas.gov.au, I think, is the website that you can go to. It's got a link for the bookings, but I'll post it in the description below so you can go straight there. So tip number 3 is kind of related to that, is be flexible if you can. So I'm talking about flexibility with your start date. If you have the opportunity to be a bit more flexible, for example, if you are not from Tasmania and you are flying in, or you are catching the ferry in, allow a little bit of time to be flexible. From your start date, you can take as long as you like to do the Overland Track, which the Overland Track is a really, really weather reliant track. The weather has a huge impact on your experience and even the possibility of you going or completing the trail. And also, when you're on trail, have that flexibility. Don't be like, it's a 6-day trail, I must complete it in 6 days. Be prepared that if the weather is terrible, you may have to have a day where you just stay at a hut or a campsite and just wait out the bad weather, especially if it's snowing. So make sure you have that flexibility in your date times. We were a bit tight. We had the day we finished, and then the afternoon/evening of the next day, we were catching the Spirit of Tasmania back to the mainland. So we did have that tight cutoff time. But what we tried to do is plan to finish the trail with that extra day in mind. So we were fully prepared to take that extra day, the day we were catching the ferry home, and be able to hike out on that morning if we needed to because of bad weather. Tip 4 is do your research. So, which it sounds like you're already doing if you're watching this video, as a great place to start, but I do recommend checking out the Parks Tasmania website. They have so much information on there. When you're researching for a trail, you really need to look into the hazards you're going to encounter along the way, the conditions of the trail. So whether, and this applies for any trail, whether it's an easy to navigate trail with lots of markers, whether it's an unmarked trail that you are going to need navigation tools for, that kind of thing. That's what you need to research. You need to research approximately how many days it would take you and the level of fitness required. The Overland Track website has a lot of information on gear that you should carry for safety. When you're doing research, it is all about your safety. So how to complete the trail in a way that you actually get to the end in one piece. So it's being aware of things like snakes, water hazards, weather hazards, what specific gear you will need to stay safe. And I know there is gear lists on the website. If I can get a link straight to the gear list, I will add it down below. Otherwise, definitely hunt that out. Another tool I used when I was researching is gear lists from the tour company. So the tour companies also put out gear lists, which are accessible. So I use them as well, just to get a broader picture of the gear that I may need as I was doing the trail. Now, I just want to sort of end this tip with is don't panic. So all that safety information is out there to keep you as safe as possible. Hiking is not a risk-free activity. It does inherently come with an element of risk, especially if you're doing hiking in an alpine region like the Overland Track. However, we'll talk a bit more about fears later, but it can get a little bit overwhelming. So don't panic. If you've got someone that you know that has done the trail before, definitely talk to them. Put in that research, but be aware this is achievable, and it's achievable for most people. So I know for myself, going out into that sort of more alpine hiking area, I was a little bit nervous because that's not something that I had had a lot of experience with before, especially on a multi-day backpacking trip. So We did also get a lot of advice, like the Overland Track, you know, it can be really dangerous, which it can. I do totally get that. However, it was probably to the point of like, are we even capable of doing this? And then when we got to the trail, actually found out that, you know, as far as people doing the trail went, we were some of the more experienced hikers on the trail. So, yeah, do your research for safety because you need to know that stuff. You can't ignore it, but also don't panic about it. This trail is something that is done by a lot of people who maybe haven't hiked before, and maybe that is you. And it is important that you go through all that safety gear information and have that with you. But it is something that is achievable. I mean, in bad weather, it is not achievable. So you need to have backups for that. But if you've read all the information, you have all the gear, and you have a basic understanding about what you're going to encounter, then you are much more likely to have an enjoyable and safe experience. Tip number 5. So basically, if you can, prepare for the trail physically. So the trail does require a degree of fitness. It is quite a good trail in the fact that you can tailor it for different fitness levels to an extent. For example, the Overland Track, they have a lot of side trails that you can go off and do. These are optional. You don't have to do these. For example, I went and climbed Mount Ossa, but I didn't climb Cradle Mountain. And you can do as many or as few of these side trips as you like. So you do have that option there, which really does change the length of days that you're doing. However, it is a hiking trail, so some degree of fitness is needed. And I cannot stress this enough, the fitter you are, the more enjoyable it will be for you. You can either do just some basic fitness, getting your cardio up, getting your muscle strength up. I am not qualified in any sort of fitness or physiotherapy or anything like that. But I just know personally for myself, if I'm fitter and I'm healthier and I have been doing more practice hikes, the bigger hikes are way more enjoyable than if I haven't been, because it's not such a shock to the system. So if you have the opportunity to get out and practice, especially if you haven't been overnight hiking before, that is a really great way to sort of set yourself up for success. But just, you know, get out there, go for a walk. If you can do a weighted walk with a weighted pack or a weight vest, even better. If you can get out into the hills or into the mountains to practice, that is almost invaluable. If there is like a sports physio or like personal trainer out there who can give me an exercise to prepare for going up and down mountains, please let me know, because honestly, the only way I have managed to train for doing that sort of like high, steep grades of up and down is to get out there and practice with my pack going up and down, and, you know, start with not much weight and increase the weight slowly. So if you have the opportunity to do that before your Overland Track hike, I do highly recommend. As a like bare minimum, you know, you need to be able to walk that many kilometers with your weight on your pack. So just bear that in mind. They're not the longest hiking days ever, but the terrain and the alpineness and the weather will really affect your ability to achieve those distances. Tip number 6 is to prepare for the hike mentally. So any sort of hike is just as much of a mental challenge as it is a physical one. So the Overland Track, most people do it in 6 to 8 days. So it's quite an extended period of time being out in nature with only the things that you're carrying. You are expending a lot of physical exertion every day, and you need to prepare mentally for that. So there may be some things that you need to adjust in what you bring to help yourself mentally achieve the day's walk and then over a period of 6 days. So for example, some people really rely on their music or podcasts just to get them through those last few kilometers of the day. So if that's you, definitely make sure you have stuff downloaded on your phone and ready to go. I know for me personally, I can do 1 or 2 days, not a headphone in sight, and just enjoying nature. But once it starts to extend into 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th day, I sometimes in the afternoons will need a little bit of a kick just to finish off the day, especially if it's been a challenging day. So I did a mix of having music downloaded on my phone. I also had a couple of podcasts as well. I'm not a huge podcast person, but just something to change it up a little bit. For me, that's invaluable. It weighs nothing, except for the headphones, I guess. But it helped me achieve my goals. You may also want to consider if you're a extroverted or an introverted person and plan for that. So in the peak season, there will be the max amount of people going each day. I think it's up to 30 or something like that, permits per day. So there's going to be a lot of people around at the camps because everyone is going in one direction. There's not a lot of flexibility. So there is going to be people around. If you are more of an introverted person, you need to kind of know, okay, maybe hut sleeping is not for me. I would prefer to set up my tent if the weather is okay, and have that time away to myself. I'm happy to hike solo. If you're a really extroverted person, you are going to love huts, especially if there's lots of people around. It was really great to get to know everyone who was doing the trail alongside of us. And also, I know I much prefer hiking with a hiking buddy or in a group situation. So that's something as well to prepare for mentally as well, whether you do need to maybe bring along a hiking buddy and convince them to come with you. There is lots of people around and they may be happy to have an extra person join their group or something like that, but they may not. So you need to be aware of that and where you are at as well. Another thing in the preparing mentally section, it's not really so much of a prepared, but just be aware that you are capable of so much more than what you probably think you are. I have found this hiking on various different trails that even on the hardest day when the weather is the worst and you think, I cannot keep going, but you know there's no other option, you are able to do so much more than what you thought you were able to do when you got up that morning. So just be aware that you probably will be challenged mentally as you go along because it's outside of what you normally do. I have done a fair amount of hiking and I've had those challenging mental days, but I was also challenged on the overland as well. A big part of that challenge is the weather. And it's just something to be aware of, that there will be challenging moments, but you are capable of getting through them. And it really gives you a good boost when you finish to look back and think, oh my goodness, I was actually able to achieve that. So just something to be aware of. Tip number 7. So basically for tip number 7, I wanted to talk about gear, but I'm not going to talk too much about gear because I could literally talk all day. I am a bit of a gear nerd, I'm not going to lie. So what I was thinking is I'll probably do a separate gear video. So if you have any questions about sort of related to gear, clothing, food, pop them in the comments below. And I will do my best to address them as I do a gear video, hopefully as a follow-up to this one. But all I wanted to say for this tip is to do your research. So start with those gear lists and then research different backpacking gear, look at what you already have and whether it's going to be suitable. Look at what you might need to buy and then sort of weigh up the weight of the product, the price of the product, and the use you're going to get out of the product. For example, it's not worth buying a super ultra lightweight, expensive piece of gear for you to use one time. You can also look into hiring gear and borrowing gear. If hiking is not something you regularly do and you're not sure whether you're going to continue doing this, this is a bit of a once in a lifetime adventure for you, try and see what you can hire. Try and see what you can borrow off of other people that you know that do that hiking situation on a more regular basis, because hiking gear can add up. But yeah, we'll definitely break down the gear in another video, but my tip is to research your gear and to be very aware of something called packing your fears. So when you pack for hiking, you tend to pack your fears. So for example, my biggest fear is probably being cold. So I do tend to pack a little bit extra clothing than what I would probably require because of that fear. And so, you know, if your fear is being hungry, you're likely to pack more food. If your fear is being uncomfortable, you're likely to pack in those extra comfort items. So just be aware that you are going to really want to pack your fears, and just evaluate each item. You know, does it have more than one use? Am I actually going to need this? Is this a safety thing that I need? Or is it something that probably could be left at home? Could I combine the use of this with another piece of gear? Is there a lighter option out there? You know, that kind of thing. But we'll definitely break that down in another video. Tip number 8. So tip number 8 is clothing. And the reason why I'm calling this a tip is because your clothing for the Overland Track has to be able to do extreme temperatures on either end. So when we did the Overland Track, I would definitely say I was unprepared for the heat that we were going to experience. Last minute, I did buy an extra pair of shorts just to chuck in for swimming, and oh my goodness, that was invaluable. Just to have that extra change of clothes that was not too warm. Hiking mostly in winter, which is what I normally do, my camp clothes are quite warm, which I couldn't wear on the Overland because I was so hot. It's summer, the sun is out till like 9 p.m. when we did it. So that cool temperatures don't come in until much later in the day. So, but on the other hand, the Overland Track is an alpine region, so it can be in the minuses, it can be snowing, and you need to have gear and clothing that covers all of those. So layers. My tip is layers. You want sort of clothing that will be able to go from that hotter temperature all the way to that minus temperature. You're going to want clothes you hike in, and then you are going to want completely separate dry clothes for camp. In my book, that is a non-negotiable, because if you have that worse weather, you need to know that you have a dry change of clothes that you can get into, and you can get warm straight away when you get to camp. But you may also want to have that option of some cooler camp clothes, especially if it is looking like it's going to be hot, if you're hiking in that sort of more hotter time of the season. Because we were swimming almost every day, you know, my hiking clothes were wet. It was too hot to put on my camp clothes, so having that cooler change of clothes was invaluable for me. And the fact that I could layer my clothes up, so I had my long sleeve merino, and then I had my puffy jacket as well. I had my rain jacket, so if I got that snowy weather, I knew I could layer up my clothing and my rain and snow protection so that I stayed warm and dry as much as possible. There's a limit to every piece of clothing. Tip number 9. So my 9th tip is about food. So traditionally, when you're thinking overnight backpacking food, you walk into a backpacking store or a camping store, and they have this big lovely shelf, and it's full of all these freeze-dried meals. And they have everything from breakfast, lunch, dinners, desserts, and you might be thinking, okay, this is backpacking food. Now, my tip for you is don't be afraid to be creative, and you don't have to eat those freeze-dried meals. We ate quite a few of freeze-dried meals on the Overland just because we did not have the time to prepare. We got our permits quite late. We didn't have very many days to get organized, so we did go for a lot of freeze-dried meals because they are quick and easy. However, they are quite pricey. So have a look in your supermarket. Normally when we say let's eat healthy, we shop around the edges and get all the fresh stuff. When you're looking for hiking food, shop the aisles. So go down the aisles, see what's there. You want to have, especially when it's your big meals, a mix of carbs, proteins, and veggies of some sort. So you can get things like 2-minute noodles, pasta sides, rice sides. You can get instant mashed potato that covers your carb bases. Then for flavors, you can get flavoring sachets, you can get packet soup mixes. Oh, forgot couscous in the carbs too. I don't like couscous that much, so I tend to leave it out, but it is a very lightweight, viable option for carbs. Veggies, you can get dried veggies. Quite a lot are kept in the international aisle. Dried mushrooms is a favorite of mine. You can also get, one thing I will tend to buy from the freeze-dried sort of section of camping stores is the freeze-dried veggie mix, because it's just so quick and easy to add a few of those into every meal. But you don't have to. If you have a dehydrator, you are set for life. But that's not an option for everyone or myself. So for proteins, I will use tuna packets. So you can get packet tuna, which is so much lighter to carry your rubbish out than tin tuna. You can get beef jerky, which I do put into my meals and heat up, and it tastes great to me when I'm hiking. I'm not sure I'd recommend it for everyday life. You can also get plant-based proteins, things like lentils, chickpeas, all that kind of thing. But there is so many ideas out there. So if you just type in cheap backpacking food or healthy backpacking food, you will have so many options. So don't feel like you are limited to those freeze-dried meals. Part B of this tip for food is you will eat more than normal. So be aware of that, and pack accordingly. There's all sorts of recommendations out there, like how much weight per day, that kind of thing. I know for me personally, I normally am around the 800 grams to a kilo a day of food. I do tend to snack a lot when I am hiking, which I don't normally in day-to-day life. So shop your supermarket for food ideas, and also be prepared to bring more food than what you would normally eat. So my final 10th tip for the Overland is don't regret not going. So if you're sort of tossing up, should I go, should I not go? It was an amazing experience to do the Overland. You may be in a place where you are not ready to do the Overland this year, but maybe it's a long-term goal of yours. Work towards it. The biggest, tip I have is don't look into these things and think, yep, that's something I can work towards achieving, and then just go off and leave it be and think, oh my goodness, I had the opportunity to do that and I didn't take it. When we had that opportunity for those last minute permits, we even got some doubt from those around us who had heard about us booking those last minute permits, about all the Overland, it's a serious undertaking, all that kind of thing. We could have so easily been discouraged from achieving the trail, but I am so glad we pushed through. We had all the gear that we needed. We were able to put that research in, having that overnight hiking experience behind us, and pick up those little extra bits and pieces that we needed for that trail in that time frame. So don't regret not doing it. If this is something you are interested in, don't be afraid to set it as a long-term goal either. It might not be achievable for you right away, but maybe with some of these tips and that preparation, in a few years' time, that could be something that you are then prepared for. So don't regret not doing it. It is an excellent trail. So that is my 10 top tips for the Overland Track. I didn't want to get into too much specifics because our Overland experience was so different to what would be the typical Overland weather, which is wet and potential snow. So I wanted to keep these tips fairly general. If you have any other tips for the overland, especially if you did hike it in some of that bad weather, because I don't have that experience to talk about, please put them in the comments down below, because by working all together, then we are all going to have the best experience. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see my Overland Track hike, please check it out, and also keep an eye out for any upcoming gear videos. And as always, guys, keep on liking hiking.